Well, I'm joined now by the International Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell, Barbara Stocking from Oxfam and Alec van Gelder of the International Policy Network. Minister, first of all, with such a massive deficit, why ring-fence aid? The accusation is, of course, that this is because you don't want to be seen as the nasty party.
Well, I think there are two reasons. The first is that it's morally right to do so. We live in a world where there are quite extraordinary discrepancies of opportunity and wealth. And I think many of us believe that we have a moral duty to do something about that. But secondly, it's also very much in our national self-interest to ensure that our development budget does something about the difficult, conflict-ridden and unstable areas in the developing world, and that we're determined to do.
But if you are going to target aid where it's most needed, why on earth is the most aid going to India, which has a space programme?
Well, we're looking at every country which Britain is giving aid to. We've said that we won't give aid anymore to China and indeed to Russia. India is a slightly different matter because we have these deep links with India through the Commonwealth and our past. Also, the average income of an Indian is something like a third of the average income of a Chinese. And there are more poor people in India than in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. So we will look at the Indian programme and we will consider how best to target. No, we haven't made that decision yet. We're looking at every programme and we will come to our conclusions shortly.
I mean, you're giving money to North Korea.
I don't think we are giving any money to North Korea.
According to the
well, if we are, it is through one of the multilateral organisations working there.
Now, Barbara Stocking, presumably ring-fencing this and being ahead of the EU target must be a joy to you. You must be delighted.
Yes, absolutely. We are delighted that the announcement was made in the Queen's speech that it's going to be 0.7% by 2013. That's absolutely great. Our concern, of course, is to make sure that the money does go to poverty and is not, as it's suggested in the programme there, potentially siphoned off in any other way.
So when you're saying siphoned off, you mean that there'll be bleed-through, for example, to the MOD or the Foreign Commonwealth Office?
Well, that's what we'd be worried about. Now, the party, the Conservative Party, even before power, was saying, well, yes, they'll stick to the actual definitions on aid, but we will, of course, be monitoring that and making sure that actually money doesn't go in ways that aren't about
presumably,
poverty.
we want to serve the British national interest in the way that money is configured.
But if you take the view that actually we're living in a very unstable world, where if with the level of poverty you've got now in the world, it's not a stable place to be. We're in a world where everything is integrated, the global economic crisis, all of those things knock back into Britain, then that drives you into why we have a common interest in dealing with these big problems.
Well, let's be clear. We are going to try and wire together more closely defence, development and diplomacy. But we are going to build...
And in what way? I mean, when you say wire together, the only way you can wire together is financially.
No, we're going to look at building on the work that the last government did in respect of the stabilisation unit. We think that work needs to be expanded. It will be done as part of the security and defence review. And for the first time ever in such a review, DFID and the development community will have a seat at the top table through the National Security Council.
The ring fence, DFID money will not go to anything at the MOD as planned.
Let me be absolutely clear about this. We will abide, as we have always said, by the OECD DAC rules on what is and is not allowed to be spent through aid. We've given that commitment. Those rules will remain.
Alec, presumably that you'll be pleased that there's going to be more transparency in the way that aid is actually handed out.
Certainly, and I think that this is kind of a welcome initiative, because if you look at what aid is already spent just in this country, there's a phenomenal amount of waste just spent on NGOs and development awareness and those kinds of activities that are completely irrelevant.
Should it be ring-fenced?
Well, I think it's a kind of a backwards approach, and we're really talking about inputs and not outputs.
But we have a situation...
And it's the same problem with the 0.7% target.
Well,
that's a target that was created 40 years ago by academics and theories that have been thoroughly debunked. We need to be talking not about how much we need to spend. We need to be looking first at what works and then thinking about how to spend it effectively.
Well, I mean, let me be clear on Alex's point. We do accept that we need to refocus on results, on outputs and outcomes, away from an obsession with putting money on the table. But that is why we have said that we will set up independent evaluation of aid.
You've got the situation that Hillary Clinton, sorry to interrupt, I just want to put this, but Hillary Clinton said in March that most of the money, most of the aid, the US aid that's gone to Afghanistan over the last 7 years has been totally wasted.
Well, that some aid has been wasted is undoubtedly true, but aid also is creating miracles around the world today. The eradication of smallpox, the fact that there are 2 million girls in school in Afghanistan. But that is why you need independent evaluation of aid in order to demonstrate to the public that they're really getting value for money.
But the public is also being asked to contribute what the public wants the money to go to. So, for example, we've got a My Aid scheme for £40 million. What do you make of that?
It's a small amount of money in the total budget, and maybe it will give us some signals about what the public are interested in. But in terms of real delivery of aid, that's not the point.
It's just public relations exercise.
Well, it may be information from the public. I'd go so far as that, but that is not one of the key things that we would want to particularly support.
I mean, I think that that's a great question, and I think that there are lots of programs. We've identified several in 2 reports that we released last year about how aid really DFID is spending money on really questionable programs that don't go to people in poor countries. Forget Afghanistan, forget Malawi. It's being spent in Hackney, and it's being spent on completely questionable activities.
Well, give me a Hackney example.
So there's a DFID funded a Brazilian dance group to come from Brazil to perform capoeira to raise awareness about development. Is that really effective spending?
No, I mean, I'm not going to defend any of the individual ones because I don't know them. But development awareness, knowledge of what's going on in the rest of the world is incredibly important in the modern world. And we have to be very careful that in, possibly tidying up some particular programs, that we don't take away the whole need for actually knowledge about being a global citizen, frankly, which is very important indeed.
I mean, Alex is right about the very large amount of money that DFID spent on a Brazilian dance group specialising in percussion for Hackney. And between my arrival in the department and reaching my ministerial office, I put a stop on that and 4 other projects.
What other projects?
These are similar development awareness projects in Britain. I put a stop on them. I also froze the programme of £6.5 million. And we are looking now at £100 million of questionable expenditure, which we don't think is really getting to the areas which we most want to support. And we're looking at that over the next 2 months as to how we might reallocate to the front line of our expenditure that £100 million.
I think at this time, in the current economic climate, I think that we need to move beyond this obsession with spending money. There are so many other activities that DFID and other areas of the British government can be doing to promoting development, and it has nothing to do with spending money. I'm talking about helping traders in Angola not spend 48 days having to wait to export their products to the European market.
Yeah, but that may need aid. It may need actually money.
It's a question of addressing policies that Angolans need to have a say in.
I do one final question. Are you at one with your Liberal Democrat colleagues on this? Because clearly during the campaign, Michael Moore was very concerned about the way that the money was going to be perhaps shifted and aligned to the MOD and FCO. Have you resolved your differences?
Well, we are absolutely at one, because both of us accept that aid must be governed according to the OECD DAC rules, and we're both completely committed to that.
Thank you all very much indeed.